Shokaku's reinforced flight deck vibrates with the thunderous takeoff of her lethal air wing on May 8, 1942, in the Coral Sea. Her advanced Type 21 air search radar had detected the American force at dawn, giving her the crucial first strike. Now, waves of aircraft launch from her advanced deck that allows for simultaneous takeoffs and landings, a tactical advantage her crew exploits mercilessly. The roar of over 80 aircraft fills the air. The swarm of Zeros, Aichi dive bombers, and Nakajima torpedo bombers bears down on USS Lexington as soon as she's sighted on the horizon. As Shokaku's strike force rushes to their objective, Lexington begins scrambling her aircraft for a swift defense. But Shokaku's aircraft are already upon her. Anti-aircraft guns fill the air with smoke and shrapnel, while fighters from both carriers maneuver in the intense dogfights that follow. It's a one-on-one aircraft carrier fight, the first of its kind in naval history. Shokaku seeks the upper hand. The Japanese bombers descend like vengeful spirits. The first bomb strikes Lexington's port side. Moments later, another blast tears through the American carrier's anti-aircraft defenses. Shokaku's pilots, coordinated by her cutting-edge command and control systems, press their advantage ruthlessly. Aboard Shokaku, Captain Takatsugu Jojima watches with grim satisfaction as reports of successful hits flood in. But the battle is far from over. The outcome of this clash will determine the fate of the entire Pacific campaign. If Shokaku and her sister ship, Zuikaku, can cripple the U.S. carrier forces, the door to Australia will be wide open, leaving the entire South Pacific vulnerable to Japanese expansion. As the combat rages on, both sides know that only one carrier can emerge victorious from this unprecedented duel. The future of the war hangs in the balance, with Shokaku at the very heart of the storm. Japan rose as a naval power following its victories in the First Sino-Japanese War of 1894 and the Russo-Japanese War of 1904. Its influence only grew with the introduction of aircraft carriers to its navy. Due to the influence of Western naval technologies and doctrines, the Imperial Japanese Navy quickly embarked on a journey of advanced shipbuilding, paving the way for a superb naval strategy whose ultimate objective was the conquest of all of Asia. Although the Washington Naval Treaty of 1922 limited the naval armament, size, and cargo of ships, it allowed the Japanese to focus on quality over quantity in shipbuilding. The treaty's restrictions led to innovations in aircraft carrier design and development. Carriers were the pillar of Japan's territorial expansion, and there was no expense limit for developing them. Carriers were the future of naval warfare, and when the Washington Naval Treaty expired in December 1936, Japan was liberated from the restrictions and came up with the most innovative aircraft carriers at the time. The birth of the Shokaku, also known as the Soaring Crane Aircraft Carrier, marked a significant leap in carrier design. Envisioned to be faster, heavier, and larger than its predecessors, the Soryu and Hiryu classes, Shokaku was the ultimate display of Japan's commitment to achieve its objective of conquering the Pacific. Sister ships Shokaku and Zuikaku were destined to be the pinnacle of Japanese carrier development, each with unique features that set them apart from their predecessors. Originally planned to house over 96 Japanese fighters to make them superior to American and British aircraft carriers like the Akagi, IJN naval engineers ultimately settled for 2 carriers that could store 72 aircraft, spare parts, and additional armor. The 2 Shokaku-class carriers were ordered in 1937 as part of the ambitious Third Naval Armament Supplement Program. The program set high objectives for the carriers, intending them to carry as many aircraft as possible, surpass the speed of carrier Hiryu, and match the defensive armament of carrier Kaga. Shokaku was laid down in December 1937 by the Yokosuka Naval Arsenal, launched in June 1939, and commissioned in August 1941, while the Empire of Japan prepared for war against the Western powers in Southeast Asia. At the time of her commissioning, she was an authentic marvel of Japanese naval engineering. With a displacement of approximately 32,000 long tons and a top speed of 34 knots, she was, as expected, a beast, with raw power and efficiency. Shokaku could carry an impressive complement of 70 to 80 aircraft, which included the renowned Mitsubishi A6M0 fighters, Aichi D-3A Val dive bombers, and Nakajima B-5N Kate torpedo bombers. Her modern design featured a bulbous bow to reduce underwater drag, enhancing both speed and range, which would provide her with a significant advantage in naval operations in future conflicts across the Pacific Ocean. The carrier's armament was also impressive, surpassing previous designs, with 8 twin 12.7cm dual-purpose guns and 12 triple 25mm anti-aircraft guns, providing Shokaku with a strong-armed shield against any air threat from fighters and bombers. Compared to previous designs, Shokaku was more significant than the Hiryu carrier and featured a raised forecastle on par with the upper hangar deck. Overall, she was 257 meters long, had a beam of 26 meters, and a draft of almost 9 meters. Compared with Soryu, she was 10,000 tons heavier, having significantly more armor, with 215 millimeters on the main armor deck and waterline belt. The sleek hull of Shokaku cut through the waves as she took her place as the flagship of the First Air Fleet, the feared Kidobutai. Under the command of Jojima Takatsugu, she wore her new designation as a special duty ship like a badge of honor in the waning days of summer 1941. Shokaku and her sister ship, Zuikaku, received their most crucial orders yet. In a dimly lit room, their commanding officers leaned over maps, plotting the audacious Hawaii operation. Pearl Harbor, the beating heart of America's Pacific defenses, was their target. With winter's chill in the air, Shokaku and Zuikaku slipped away from Japan's shores on November 26th, joining the carrier's striking force. As they sailed towards destiny, a blanket of silence fell over the fleet. No radio transmissions pierced the air. The element of surprise was paramount. The carrier's decks bristled with the lethal force of 18 Mitsubishi A6M2 Zero fighters, their silver bodies gleaming in the sun, standing ready. Beside them, 27 Aichi D-3A1 Val dive bombers and 27 Nakajima B-5N1 and B-5N2 Kate torpedo bombers waited, their bomb bays laden with destruction. As the first rays of sunlight kissed the Hawaiian shores on that Sunday morning, the roar of engines shattered the peace. Shokaku and Zuikaku launched their first strike. 26 Val dive bombers, under Takahashi Kakuichi's command, screamed toward their targets, flanked by 5 nimble Zeeks, led by Lieutenant Kaneko Tagashi. Anti-aircraft fire erupted, filling the sky with dangerous shrapnel. Yet the Japanese pilots pressed on, their resolve unshaken. When the smoke cleared, only one dive bomber had fallen. The second wave took flight as the morning went on. 27 Kate torpedo planes, led by Lieutenant Tatsuo Ichihara, climbed high above the American defenses, then plummeted towards their prey. Bombs found their marks with devastating precision, turning the harbor into an inferno of twisted metal and burning oil. As the attacks concluded, the planes from Shokaku and Zuikaku returned, their fuselages unmarked, their missions complete. Below them, the once proud USS Arizona, Oklahoma, California, and Maryland lay, broken and burning. Yet, as reports flooded in, a crucial detail emerged. The American carriers were absent. Admiral Nagumo, weighing the risks of a third strike against an enemy of unknown strength, made his decision. With the harbor in ruins, he ordered the fleet to withdraw, leaving behind a nation in shock and a world forever changed. On December 8, 1941, Shokaku and Zuikaku steamed toward Wake Island, their decks launching aircraft against American defenses mere days after Pearl Harbor. By early January 1942, the sister ships rejoined Nagumo's strike force for Operation R. On January 20th, over 90 aircraft from both carriers led a massive bombardment against Rabaul. From January 21st to 23rd, they launched furious raids across Allied airfields in New Guinea, Madang, Leh, and Bulolo. By January 23rd, the Japanese had claimed an airfield at Rabaul. On April 5, 1942, Shōkaku and Zuikaku departed for Operation Sea, the assault in the Indian Ocean. They struck Colombo on April 5th, then turned to Ceylon and Trincomalee. On April 9th, as British forces approached, including HMS Hermes, HMS Cornwall, and HMS Dorsetshire, a fierce battle erupted. Shokaku's Zeros decimated the enemy squadrons, while Val dive bombers found their marks on Royal Navy ships. Anti-aircraft fire filled the sky, and the sea darkened with fuel from stricken vessels. In just one day, Shokaku and Zuikaku's aircraft had sunk an aircraft carrier, 2 heavy cruisers, and several merchant vessels. From December 1941 to April 1942, these sister ships had participated in operations spanning thousands of miles from Hawaii to Ceylon, cementing their reputation as the vanguard of Japan's rapid expansion across Asia. May 1942 marked a turning point in naval warfare as Shokaku and Zuikaku sailed into the first carrier-versus-carrier battle in history. The Imperial Navy had launched Operation Mo, aiming to invade Port Moresby, New Guinea. If successful, this operation would not only neutralize Australian air bases, but also open the door for a potential invasion of the Australian mainland. Vice Admiral Takagi led the operation, cautioned about the possible presence of U.S. Navy carriers. However, no American carriers were expected until Carrier Division 5 reached the center of the Coral Sea. This cautious optimism was soon shattered when U.S. intelligence intercepted the Japanese attack plans, prompting the swift deployment of USS Lexington and Yorktown to counter the Japanese landing force. On May 8, 1942, the Battle of the Coral Sea erupted in full force. As the Japanese strike force prepared to attack, fate dealt different hands to the sister ships. Zuikaku managed to avoid detection by hiding in a fortuitous rainstorm. Shokaku, however, wasn't as lucky. Spotted by enemy aircraft, she sustained hits from 3 bombs, crippling one of her flight deck elevators. The damage to Shokaku's flight deck was substantial, severely limiting her ability to launch and recover aircraft. Battered and nearly out of the fight, she could no longer actively participate in the air operations. However, Shokaku's airborne squadrons, already in the sky when she was hit, played a crucial role in the battle. These aircraft contributed significantly to the sinking of USS Lexington, demonstrating the carrier's impact even when wounded. Although the battle's outcome was tactically inconclusive, the Allies extracted a strategic advantage in stopping the Japanese advance towards Port Moresby. Despite the damage, Shokaku, accompanied by her sister ship, returned to Japan for repairs, avoiding further attacks from pursuing U.S. forces. Due to her repair status, Shokaku could not take part in the Battle of Midway. Still, the Eastern Solomons lay ahead for the sister ships. There was more to be done. In August 1942, during the Eastern Solomons campaign, Shokaku and Zuikaku played a critical role in spearheading the fight against the U.S. Navy. As the battle erupted, Shokaku launched multiple aggressive airstrikes against the enemy, zeroing in on the carriers USS Enterprise and Saratoga. These relentless offensives aimed to cripple American naval power and secure air superiority. Simultaneously, Shokaku provided essential support for Japanese ground operations on Guadalcanal, bolstering their efforts to hold strategic positions on the island before the ground troops could be outnumbered by the Americans. The fierce engagements came at a steep price. In the heat of battle, Shokaku lost several aircraft, including 10 Val dive bombers and 5 Zero fighters. Despite her significant contributions and relentless efforts, the campaign ended in a tactical defeat for Japan. Shokaku faced her next challenge in October at the Battle of the Santa Cruz Islands. The battle was a maelstrom of fury as Shokaku's aircraft launched multiple strikes against the carriers USS Hornet and USS Enterprise. Zuikaku provided crucial air support, and together they managed to cripple USS Hornet, which was later abandoned and sunk by Japanese destroyers. However, the victory came at a high cost. Both Zuikaku and Shokaku were heavily battered by the enemy, losing many fighters in the fierce dogfights. Shokaku herself took several bomb hits from American dive bombers, igniting severe fires and causing significant structural damage. Despite the intense damage, Shokaku's resilience shone through as she survived the battle and withdrew for extensive repairs, which kept her out of action for several months. The Battle of the Santa Cruz Islands was a tactical victory for Japan, but the high cost of Shokaku's damage significantly impacted the carrier's strength of the Imperial Navy. The relentless combat proved the might of the Japanese carriers, but also highlighted the growing intensity and scale of the Pacific War. After months of repairs, Shokaku returned to the fight in May 1943 and was scheduled to depart to the Aleutian Islands, Alaska, to counterattack the American forces. Still, the operation was called off, and she remained at Truk Island until June 1944, when she set sail to join the mobile fleet for Operation Ago. This was a daring counterattack against Allied forces in the Mariana Islands that culminated in the Battle of the Philippine Sea. The skies erupted in chaos as Shokaku's strike waves faced devastating losses from American fighters and accurate naval anti-aircraft fire. In the storm of steel and fire, some Japanese fighters and bombers managed to return to the carrier for ammunition. One of Shokaku's D4Y Sutse strike groups heroically broke through the American defenses and struck the battleship USS South Dakota, inflicting severe damage and casualties at the cost of their own lives. Yet, Shokaku's time had run out, and tragedy struck her when submarine USS Kavala launched a torpedo attack. Shokaku, caught while refueling and rearming her aircraft, was hit by 3 torpedoes. The hits ignited uncontrollable avgas fires, turning the ship into an inferno of smoke and fire. At 12:10 p.m., an aerial bomb detonated, igniting aviation fuel vapors that quickly spread across the carrier. The evacuation was cut short as Shokaku abruptly took on water and sank quickly, bow first, taking down with her over 1,270 sailors. Light cruiser Yahagi and 3 destroyers managed to rescue Captain Matsubara and 570 survivors. Still, the battle was lost, and Japan's carrier force was all gone. The Imperial Navy was crippled for the rest of the war, and there was no stopping the American naval forces from reaching the fatherland.